Good morning. Let me begin by thanking Congressman Mike Thompson, Congresswoman Johanna Hayes, and Congresswoman Lucy McBath, and members of the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force for their critically important work throughout the years to address this necessary issue. And I want to thank other members of the House Democratic Caucus who have joined us here today. From the very beginning of this Congress, House Democrats have made clear that we are ready, willing, and able to find bipartisan common ground with our Republican colleagues on any issue, including gun safety legislation, in order to improve the quality of life of everyday Americans. But consistently throughout this Congress, extreme MAGA Republicans have refused to work with us to solve problems on behalf of hardworking American taxpayers. Instead, the do-nothing Republican Congress has visited upon the American people chaos, dysfunction, and extremism over and over and over again. 11 years ago today, the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School shocked the conscience of our nation. 20 innocent, precious first-grade students and 6 educators were murdered in cold blood. The country said we must never allow it to happen again. But this year alone, there have been 635 mass shootings in the United States of America. And more than 40,000 Americans have lost their lives due to gun violence in 2023 alone. That is unacceptable. That is unconscionable. That should be un-American. Today, the MAGA extremists in the do-nothing Republican Congress are leaving town without meaningfully addressing the gun violence epidemic in America or any other issue of significance. No progress on the economy, no progress on health care, no progress on affordability, no progress on public safety, no progress on education, no progress on any issue that addresses the health, the safety, or the economic well-being of the American people. Instead, extreme MAGA Republicans are trying to slash Social Security, cut Medicare, undermine a woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions, repeal the Affordable Care Act, and end democracy as we know it, but Democrats will continue to stand in the way and defend the American people. That's right. We will continue to press forward, particularly when it comes to addressing the gun violence epidemic in America. In the last Congress, under the leadership of Speaker Nancy Pelosi, House Democrats were able to pass the first meaningful gun safety legislation in 30 years. And it will save lives. But much more needs to be done. Yes. And we are ready to do that work. But extreme MAGA Republicans are standing in the way. We are here as House Democrats to make it clear that we will continue to speak up. We will continue to show up. We will continue to stand up. We will not rest until we end the gun violence epidemic in the United States of America. It is now my honor to yield to the distinguished gentleman from the great state of California, the chair of the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force, the Honorable Mike Thompson.
Thank you, Leader Jeffries. 11 years ago, in 5 minutes, 6 teachers and 20 precious, innocent first graders kids 6 and 7 years old were brutally murdered at Sandy Hook Elementary School. Young, innocent children were gunned down, some at point-blank range, in cold blood at the place where they should have been safe, their school. They were murdered in classrooms and hallways while hiding in closets and under their desks. Their futures were snuffed out in the blink of an eye. 6 dedicated educators were also murdered while protecting the students that they loved. The families of Newtown experienced imaginable tragedy that day, and that tragedy has stayed with them every minute of every day since. 11 years later, in what should have been their senior year of high school, there are 20 high school graduations that won't be celebrated. There's a lasting scar that remains for the families and the survivors of this massacre, the entire Newtown community and our country. December 14, 2012 was one of the darkest days in our nation's history. It was this shooting that prompted then Democratic leader Pelosi to create the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force that I'm honored to continue to chair today. We've seen some progress when it comes to gun violence prevention, but it took 10 years. And while it was a step in the right direction, it's not enough. This Congress, House Republicans have not only blocked our gun violence prevention bills that would save lives, they've passed a bill that would make it easier to commit mass shootings. In previous Congresses, the House passed bipartisan gun violence prevention bills that had the overwhelming support of the American people, and Senate Republicans refused to take the bills up for a floor vote. Today, guns are the leading cause of death for kids and teenagers, and the Republican leadership in Washington refuses to work with us to pass bills that would save lives and make our schools and our communities safer. The only place in the United States of America where gun violence prevention is a partisan issue is in the building that we stand in front of this morning. We owe it to every family who has lost a loved one to gun violence and every parent that worries about gun violence when they send their kids off to school to do all we can to keep firearms out of the hands of people who are a danger to themselves or a danger to others. Republicans must stop blocking efforts to keep our kids safe. On this 11th anniversary of Sandy Hook, my heart still breaks for the Newtown community and the families of those we lost. Thank you, Leader Jeffries, for being a steadfast partner in putting our kids over the gun lobby and working to pass bills that would help keep our communities safe. Now it's my honor to introduce one of the vice chairs of the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force and the representative from Sandy Hook Elementary, from the Sandy Hook community, and a school teacher herself, someone who knows the pain that was felt that day and has been felt every day since, our distinguished colleague, Johanna Hayes.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader Jeffries, Chairman Thompson, and to all my colleagues for being here today. Today marks 11 years since 20 innocent children and 6 courageous educators were murdered in my district at Sandy Hook Elementary School. Newtown was forever changed that day, and our community has been bound by grief. 5 years ago, when I got elected to Congress, I took out a piece of paper and I wrote the names of those 26 people on it. I put that piece of paper in my pocket and I brought it here with me to DC. I taped it to the back of my door in my office, and every time that door closed, I looked at the names of those kids and was reminded of the work that I had to do in this Congress. I brought with me their stories, the memories that their families had shared with me, the hopes and dreams that they will never have the chance to realize. I also brought with me a promise and a commitment to action. My very first piece of legislation in the Congress, and what motivated me to run in the first place, was threats to arm teachers as an answer to preventing school shootings and gun violence. My commitment to work to ban assault weapons has not waned. My commitment to expand background checks is even more resolute. My commitment to keep children alive is why I am here. On that day, my students asked me, "Miss, why aren't the adults doing anything to make this stop?" My students, who were then 17, about to graduate from high school and enter the world where they would be advocates and enthusiasts and speak on behalf of a safer community and a life in a world that they wanted to live in. My students are enjoying those things today. Today I speak to the now 17-year-old students who survived Sandy Hook to let them know that I am still here fighting for you. We were able to pass the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act last Congress, but children are still dying. Enough has not been done. We have 2 discharge petitions right now on the floor trying to bring this legislation. It should be something that is not partisan. It should be something that we should all agree on. But either way, it should be something that we are putting on the floor and taking a vote on so that the American people know where we stand on gun violence. I ask my colleagues to remember their commitment to the people that they serve. I ask my colleagues to remember those students, now 17-year-olds, about to graduate from high school. I ask you all to remember who is doing the work and who is not doing the work, and make sure we are voting in leaders that are committed to keeping children alive. I ask that we join together to end this gun violence epidemic. We will never forget those tragically murdered at Sandy Hook, but let us honor their memory with action, not with speeches, not with press conferences, not with color campaigns, but with action. Congress has the ability to legislate. We make the laws. That's what I taught my kids. We have the awesome responsibility of looking at our laws and saying, this does not work. Let us change it. Let's keep this piece, but reframe this piece. We have the ability to do that. I promised kids that we would do that. We need your help to make sure that this epidemic ends. I am so just honored to work with this group of people who, like me, believe that schools should be safe places, that our children should be able to thrive in their communities, and are committed to working side by side with me to do that work. I ask you all to pray for my community. These are the strongest, most resilient people you will ever know. These are people who have shared their pain with the world under a microscope. These are people who have grieved out loud in order to make sure that no other family has to endure this unimaginable pain. So today I ask you to hold them up because they need us. They need us all to let them know that they are not in this fight alone. And someone who just has just been a rock and a hand to my back through every shooting, through every anniversary, through every piece of legislation that has been blocked and stalled, someone who will not stop until this epidemic is ended, a mom on a mission, Representative Lucy McBath.
Well, thank you so much, Leader Jeffries, and thank you so much to the Chair of the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force, Mike Thompson, and thank you so much to my colleague and classmate, Johanna Hayes, who stands as a bedrock for her community each and every single year. And we're grateful, truly grateful, to have her standing on the front lines for gun safety. Today is a very, very difficult anniversary. One on a list of far too many in this country. 11 years ago today, I was still reeling from the pain of losing my own son, Jordan, when the news broke of a shooting at an elementary school. 26 families joined a club that no parent wants to be a part of. When 20 children and 6 of their teachers were murdered in their classrooms. Babies were robbed of their privilege of growing up. I watched that, sick to my stomach, as our leaders offered empty thoughts and hollow prayers. And our nation sat by helplessly as we saw gun violence rip apart our communities again and again and again. I am so proud that we have made historic progress in the 5 years since I came to Congress. But there is still so much more work that needs to be done. Instead of bringing any meaningful gun violence prevention legislation to the floor in this Capitol, the House Republican majority is leaving town for the year. The victims and the survivors all across this country deserve better than that. The families and classmates from Sandy Hook deserve better than that. The American people deserve far better than that. How many more must we lose? How many more broken families? What will it take for our Republican majority to have the courage to stand to do what is right? How do they look at the broken families and the broken parents and the broken communities that suffer the same tragedies? How do they look at them each and every single day and say, I represent you, and I'm protecting you, and I'm keeping you safe? How do they even sleep at night? America, we deserve far better than this.
I want to thank Leader Jeffries for bringing us all together, and to my colleagues on the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force, Mike Thompson, Lucy McBath, Johanna Hayes. Thank you so much for all of your work. Today, Speaker Johnson will send members home for the holidays without acting on gun violence. And yet, far too many of our fellow Americans will gather around the holiday table with an empty chair after we've seen more than 40,000 gun deaths this year. This is a shameful abdication of our duty by this temporary Republican majority. Every single one of us on these steps remembers exactly where we were when news trickled out about Newtown and the 20 children and 6 educators that were killed. As a parent of a first grader at the time, as a parent of a high school senior today who's going to graduate, we'll think about those young angels. House Democrats, many of us are parents as well as legislators, have been fighting year after year for common sense gun laws to prevent tragedy like this from ever happening again. And we reject the cynicism that says passing this kind of legislation is simply not possible. When Democrats had the majority, we passed the most significant piece of gun violence legislation in 3 decades. Our schools were safer as a result of our work. It can be done. And when Democrats take back the House, we're going to finish the job and pass comprehensive gun legislation that has been plaguing our communities for far too long. That is our responsibility. That is our mandate, and that's what we'll do. Thank you so much, Leader Jeffries.